So, it's a pleasure to meet you. I've come across some of your stuff on Instagram, and I'm sure they target me. I'm posting about addiction recovery, and you got, fit recovery, and it just is fascinating to me. It's incredible. So break it down a little bit for me, like a little bit of your story and how this all came about.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to be here. So thanks again for having me on the show.
Thank you.
I have a very open-ended and open-minded approach towards this subject. I try not to be the guy with all the answers. I certainly don't have all the answers. This whole project of Fit Recovery started in 2014 after I quit drinking.
Okay.
And it's really been an evolving, I don't like the word journey anymore because it's so cliche, but I'll say adventure for lack of a better term, where, it started off as a little blog. And all of a sudden I had a lot of people coming to my blog. And, I was reading all sorts of books, things only tangentially related to alcohol recovery sometimes, but taking good lessons from it, reading about nutrition, neuroscience, psychology, TMS, or mind-body syndrome stuff. And, the subconscious mind, the conscious mind, how much free will do we have? All of these things seem to fuse together into our understanding of what this issue is that you've struggled with, that I've struggled with, and that millions of people struggle with. So that's kind of how it started. And it's still surreal to me that this is what I do for a living. I did some one-on-one coaching with people. I still do some of that. I do less than I used to. And, I was always very careful to say, like, look, I majored in economics and political science, and I worked in finance. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a psychiatrist. I have an inquisitive mind, I think, but take everything I say with a grain of salt. But if you want to join me on this adventure, I think it'll be really rewarding because it was rewarding for me.
Sure.
So people started to benefit. And then, I was able to hire some people to help me who do have letters after their names and who agreed with me. So that was comforting. And so now it's just become this thing. And, I have my online course, Total Alcohol Recovery 2.0, which is a collection of epiphanies that I've had and basic information about, say, biochemistry of the nature of alcohol addiction from a biochemical standpoint, but also things you can do to help recover. And of course, we delve into the social, psychological, and spiritual aspects as well. But even more than the information, it's a community of people who are extremely uplifting and positive. And so that's become sort of the centerpiece of what I do, is try to help people, bring like-minded people together. And there's no dogma that links us. It's really just an open-ended approach to trying to figure out, what are the missing links? That's the term I use often, that kept us from achieving whatever our goal was, whether it was abstinence. For most people, it's abstinence.
Sure.
But I'm open-minded to the point that, if someone's drinking 3 glasses of wine a night and they can't seem to stop, but they're not having horrible withdrawal, they're not having post-acute withdrawal, maybe they would like to find a way to have a glass of wine, 1 glass of wine once a month. I'm happy to help those people. And I think really I call it the hierarchy of recovery, but the biochemical, psychological, social, and spiritual pillars are as much for life optimization for someone who hasn't had an addiction as it is for alcohol recovery for someone who does. And, whether people have AA or smart recovery or, or the Sinclair method or medication assisted treatment, regardless of what else they're doing, I think it can help to at least foster a sense of intellectual curiosity about what's going on and hopefully get fit and get healthier in the process. Because I find like the number one thing is, if you've had an addiction, especially with alcohol, which is arguably the most toxic drug, then the big lesson from
by
that,
the numbers for sure.
Exactly. Yeah. It's horrible for you on a cellular level. Every body system is affected. It would seem that one of the primary lessons would be, it matters what you put into your body. So maybe we can start, if all else has failed, maybe we can start by focusing on that.
That's a great point. That is incredible. I'm a big AA 12-step person. It saved my life and I love it. What you're saying, I was, watching your videos and stuff too, last couple of weeks, delving in. It's so true because I find a little bit of a missing link there, specifically when you're talking about digging into the spiritual, social, psychological, but most important, because they try to do that in there with the fellowship and the steps and all that, the biochemical. And I know that's big on what you talk about with, GABA depletion and people with, their natural baseline of when they're drinking, when they're not drinking. I think I mean, I don't know your exact approach to it, but the simple fact of, like you said, always being curious and asking those questions is incredible, because I could put down said substance and, work a program great. But if there's biochemical things going on that we're not at least addressing, or don't even know, you can't hit what you don't see, right? Like, dig into that a little bit, because it is so fascinating to me. And like, it's almost this huge piece. You said a puzzle piece many times. It's like, how can we go about recovery without looking at this piece? I could do every program in the world. If there's this biochemical something going on, I need to target that.
Right. Well, I think even in AA, they recognize that alcohol addiction is, there's a physical allergy, as they say, then there's
Sure.
a mental obsession, and then a spiritual malady. I might be butchering that paraphrase.
No, that's correct. Yep.
So that's not dissimilar from the biopsychosocial spiritual approach. The social settings are obvious, so maybe they didn't feel a need to list that.
Sure.
But I think science has come a long way since the 1930s, not necessarily in a way that would debunk someone who's earnestly working that program. For others, they might decide that it's not their best path. And that honestly was the case for me. I did AA for a while, and then I kind of followed my own thing. Some people do the church, some people do whatever. And, as far as the biochemical aspect, it's really hard to focus on your spirituality, as you alluded to, if you have really high cortisol levels and adrenaline levels, and you're on the verge of a panic attack, and you have hypoglycemia. Some studies have been done showing that north of 90% of people who have been dependent on alcohol have hypoglycemia, and that's low blood sugar, because alcohol is a highly refined sugar. Yeah. So you end up with these never-ending insulin spikes that wipe out your blood sugar due to regular drinking. And what happens when you have hypoglycemia is your prefrontal cortex is deactivated, and so you're less able to make decisions. Like, it's your reptilian brain that's in control at that point. And of course, if you drive past a liquor store and you're having a hypoglycemic episode, it might feel like the car is driving you into that lot. And that happened to me many times. And it's more than just blood sugar too. Sure. People who drink constantly are artificially releasing endorphins. Their alcohol is a complex drug that causes a cascade of neurotransmitter effects. Sure. It affects dopamine, it affects serotonin, it affects GABA, especially GABA being the primary calming chemical in the brain. Yeah. So what you see with people who quit drinking is that they have what's called a glutamate rebound. So GABA is the primary calming neurotransmitter in the brain. It dampens electrical activity, and glutamate is like, it increases electrical activity. You need both. So it's not like glutamate is a bad stress chemical. It could be called a stress chemical, but to be alert, you need a certain amount of it. With people who have been drinking for a long period of time, if they quit, their brain has turned down its natural production. It's turned down the dial on GABA production. And what I didn't understand when I quit was that doesn't just bounce back immediately. The brain's going, no, we'll get some more alcohol. So that can stimulate our GABA, our calming activity. So you can have days, weeks, months for some people with insufficient GABA activity. And that imbalance is really what accounts for seizures and acute withdrawal. Because if you have a huge imbalance between GABA and glutamate, you can have a seizure and potentially die, which is why that can be fatal. So there's some understanding in the mainstream that, like, oh, we need to give people benzodiazepines, because if we don't, and they're in acute withdrawal and they're heavily dependent on alcohol, they could have DTs, it could get really bad. So benzodiazepines do a great job of stimulating GABA temporarily, subbing in for alcohol. And then what's typically done is they put you on a tapered dosage. So after a few days or a week, or however, depending on how dependent you are and how big you are, whatever, they'll give you a dosage. You get off the benzodiazepine, but you're still not feeling optimal. You still haven't produced enough GABA. You're not producing enough GABA as a baseline to actually feel calm and stable. Yeah. And so in order to do that, there are targeted nutrients that you can take. And in that instance, L-glutamine, which is an amino acid that I ran into by accident because I wanted to get fit after I quit drinking. I was like, if I can get fit, that'll be an additional barrier to me falling back into alcohol addiction. So I purchased some L-glutamine at a GNC, which we weren't supposed to.
For fitness.
For fitness.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I noticed randomly that my alcohol cravings were reduced by like 40%, maybe more. I had bad alcohol cravings. They didn't go away totally. But what you also need in addition to glutamine would be vitamin B6 and magnesium. So that's literally the tip of the iceberg. I could talk about nutrition and supplements all day. And there's lots of free articles on my blog, fitrecovery.com/blog. For anyone who's interested, even if they don't want to join our community, there's a lot of stuff I have on YouTube. But that's just, I think, the best example of, we have treatment approaches that are well-meaning, and yet they treat the acute detox. And there's not much thought given to what goes on in post-acute withdrawal, especially in the brain, as far as trying to raise these levels of neurotransmitters that we need to feel good. And I often say it's not an optional luxury to feel good. A lot of people will reach for alcohol. For some people, there may be like childhood trauma that they've never resolved, and maybe they are escaping, and maybe that's why they first turned to alcohol. But I first turned to alcohol because it was fun and it made me feel good. And it was very simple. I already felt good, but I wanted to feel better.
Sure.
And, I had some potentially genetic or biochemical predispositions that we could discuss, but most of it, I had a great childhood. It was just like, all right, I already feel good. I feel like an 8 out of 10 most of the time, but when I drink, it's like a 12 out of 10. So why not do that? So what I try to tell people is, and hopefully uplifting, it's possible without alcohol to use things like supplementation and mindset work and even spiritual work. Sure. All together, there's a synergy, and you can feel better without alcohol as your baseline than you ever did while drinking.
Wow. That is an incredible statement and inspiration to people, because I can relate to you a ton on that as well. A great childhood. It was, I was watching one of your videos where you talked about seeing a woman who's maybe 35 years sober, struggling real bad, and that to me was my biggest fear. If I'm going to be sober, whatever, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, 50 years, and I'm miserable, I'm going back to drinking. You said that word for word in the video, like, what's the point? So I think it's incredible to tackle that, or at least, know what's going on, because who wants to get into recovery to have a miserable life? But the fact that you're saying you could get to the level of, the peak alcohol happiness high, so to speak, at the beginning stages, and even above that, is a huge inspiration to people. And I loved how you said in another video, some people say it's like work or it's crazy, but things like yoga and the sauna and the cold showers, you love them. And how do you kind of trick your mindset, or how do you teach yourself to love some of those things that may not be pleasurable?
Yeah, that's a great question. Reframing. I've basically, with things such as, in the winter, I wish I could do this all year round, but I live in Savannah, Georgia. It's pretty hot in the summer. There's an outdoor pool at my gym that almost no one ever goes into except me. And I only go into it in the winter when it's like 50 to 60 degrees. Okay. And I like to stay in there for as long as I can. I literally faked it until I made it with that one. Okay. Because my parents think I'm crazy. Some of my friends think I'm crazy. I got one of my buddies who's a big jack trainer in the gym. I said, come on, it's good. And he's in there shivering and shaking, shivering and shaking like a leaf. But I was like, no, you can't be thinking, oh my God, this is cold. This sucks. I'm going to die. My grandma told me when I was little that I'd get a cold if I was cold. Put all that aside. I literally, this is the geekiest thing ever, but I will think to myself, like, norepinephrine boost, cold shock proteins, reduced inflammation. All those things are true. It's backed by studies. When you think of that and do, jump in a 50-degree pool, it's way more tolerable, like instantly more tolerable. And I did a little trick where I thought to myself, all right, this is going to suck, just as an experiment. And I jumped in and I jumped right out. So the power of the mind is a formidable thing, and it's something to be accounted for. So I know I'm known as like the supplement guy or the biochemistry guy, but I don't necessarily see people as automatons that are just driven by a bunch of some chemical soup in the body. I think we need to optimize that chemical soup so that we can increase our base level reserve of willpower. And once we do that, we have the power of conscious thought, and we have the power of consciously deciding what we're going to do. And if we're going to jump in a cold pool and we're going to like it, we have the freedom to do that, and it can be liberating. Wow. Now, with certain things like the sauna, it's a similar thing. After 20 minutes in a sauna, it can be kind of grueling. Now, obviously you have to make sure you bring enough water in there, but I have to think to myself, heat shock proteins, reduced inflammation. And also I tie my preference for that to how I feel afterwards, which is I know I'm going to get a growth hormone surge from it. It's going to help me recover from workouts. I know that I'm going to be more relaxed, especially if I take a cold shower afterwards. You know, I used to struggle with insomnia, and during the pandemic, I couldn't go to the gym. And that was my cure for a lot of things, you know, that were stupid little lifestyle issues that remained even after quitting drinking, like going to bed too late, you know, whatever, sometimes eating junk food. So I had to figure out, you know, how I was going to patch this up during the lockdown, which thankfully wasn't too long here. But I spent what seemed like a stupid amount of money on an infrared sauna. But I can say in retrospect, it was one of the best investments ever. I use it almost every night. And after 20 to 30 minutes in that infrared sauna and a cold shower, I am out when I hit the pillow. Now, ironically for me, I still have a problem where I don't want to start that routine until too late because I'm too excited to get things done. So it's easy for me to stay up late working on stuff, but that's a much more high quality problem than when I was drinking. But to bring it back to the alcohol, you know, I was running on a subconscious autopilot when I drank. And the interesting thing is I still somewhat run on a subconscious autopilot, but I've changed the ingredients in that autopilot, or I've changed the map, so to speak. So I wouldn't say that I necessarily have more willpower or that I'm like a more moral person. I've just changed my preferences. And I think it really does help if you have, you know, the ability to affect a lifestyle design or focus on your life's purpose, achieve great things. That's great. But I didn't do that in early recovery. Most people who are in early recovery are not all of a sudden starting businesses that are the best thing ever, and they might not even be getting in shape. So the good news is I think the first step is simply trying to rewire your preferences. It's simple in a sense. It's not easy, but it's conceptually simple if you just think of it as changing your preference is just coming up with something more optimal in a given context. So I used to have to drink, or so I thought, in order to have me time at the end of the day after working a job that I hated. And I was like, this is my me time. And of course, 2 glasses of wine, or what should have been 2 glasses of wine, would turn into a fifth of whiskey and 2 bottles of wine, you know, until 3 in the morning. And then I have to get up in 4 hours for work, and I'd be coming in with, you know, bloated chin and yellow or bloodshot eyes. But I thought that was necessary for me. Now I had physical addiction, so that's another component. But psychologically, I thought like, well, I can't dispense with my me time or I'll go insane. So I can't quit drinking. But now I think my routine today is a testament to the fact that it's possible to make your me time consist of things that you want to do. Some people might hate cold pools or the sauna. They might have a totally different nighttime routine. Maybe they're an artist. They want to paint. I had one coaching client once who, you know, she wasn't really into the fitness aspect. She was a little bit older and she lived out in the country, but she was committed to figuring out things that she would prefer to do rather than alcohol, which seemed like an impossible task in the beginning. If you'd asked me at the height of my drinking career, what would you rather do than drink? I would say nothing, nothing. There's nothing.
Exactly.
But she had an open mind and she thought about it and she journaled, and she was an artist. She had been an artist, and she embarked on this project to turn her basement into an art studio, which consisted of like, you know, totally refurnishing the basement, buying the canvases and the paints that she needed. She sent me a picture 6 months later, and she had like 20 or more paintings of, and it was, what do you call it? Like landscape paintings. She lived out in the country, and they were beautiful. And I don't know if she was going to sell them or keep them, or if it was a business or just a passion. But she said, yeah, every night I used to drink. Now I paint.
Wow. And that last sentence encompasses it all. Like, that just breaks it down so simply, but through a lot of hard work on her end and stuff. But that is incredible. Wow. And that's incredible too, that from the outside, it would seem, in the name alone, fit recovery, that fitness is a huge part, which it is great and can be. But I know a lot of people, it may not be, and it's harder for them to get into it. But having that open mind, or just, you know, I guess kind of individualizing it per person, is an incredible way to look at it and tackle it. And how, you know, fulfilled and stuff. I bet you she just feels like on the inside just incredible when she gets to go down and do that. And like you said, that after effect too of the me time, it's not something that is literally biochemically destroying my body to the following day, the following week. She probably feels like $1,000,000.
Exactly.
Wow.
Yeah. When your me time doesn't destroy you, you stop seeing the world as some malevolent universe that's making you have to make impossible choices. And you start
Yeah,
seeing it as a more benevolent thing, or maybe in a different thing if you're an atheist or whatever. But I
sure.
mean, I'm not. I have a sense of spirituality. And I have to say, like, I've never felt more connected to like my community,
Mm,
the cosmos generally, the world, even though there are horrible things that happen that I could get hung up on. But that's another motto of mine that I actually got from Tony Robbins, which is you feel what you focus on. So, if you wake up in the morning depressed, what were you thinking about? That happened to me
sure.
once. I watched a Holocaust documentary for 2 hours right before bed, and I woke up feeling bad. And I was like, oh, that's why. And I'm not saying no one should watch those, but you have to keep an eye on what you're focusing on. And I think happiness is attainable for anyone with a substance abuse issue. But in the beginning, most people won't feel happy. It'll seem like an image on the horizon that's maybe attainable. And I think that's when it helps to focus on, well, all right, what are some paths that I could experiment with that would bring me closer to that, if not there? And I'm sure when she started reorganizing her basement, she probably wanted to drink. She had help with the supplements and some other strategies, but she probably, if you'd asked her, are you happy? She probably would have said, ask me, in a couple of months. And then a few months later, I know she was happy. She was glowing when she sent me that picture of all of these things that she'd done.
That's incredible. That's the process. That's the getting the hard work in motion. But and that goes back a little bit to what you were talking about with the prefrontal cortex. It was always explained to me as the stop sign. But if I continue to use, oh, hey guys.
Head of security has awoke.
Oh man. If I continue to use substances and not work on those areas, that stop sign's never going to work. And when I'm sitting there and her first week of doing that thought comes in of drink or studio, we're going to keep going to the alcohol. But that's why it's so important to attain that. I was going to say real quick, it was so funny you mentioned the sauna. I was at my grandma's on Sunday dinner, like, I don't know, a month after COVID happened, and I'm just complaining out loud. I'm so mad. The gym's closed. I don't have my sauna. And my cousin's fiance, he's a real serious guy. He's a real nice guy. He's like, talk to me after dinner. And he just bought a piece of property. They left their sauna there, and he sold it to me at half price. And best investment I could have ever got.
That's amazing. Good
Love
for
it.
you. It's the best thing ever, right?
Incredible. And
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, it's an infrared. Do you think there's a major difference in infrared and kind of steam or whatever the other?
I don't know. So I got an infrared, because it was the most affordable and easiest option.
Sure.
I mean, I would love to have a conventional one with like the rocks and you pour water, but I don't know where, I guess the water evaporates. I certainly don't have, it would be a pain to set up piping to, flush stuff
It
out.
says it gets everywhere, the moisture, the mold.
Yeah, a steam room's a no-go. I guess they have things a friend told me about where you can turn your shower into a steam room. You get these things but I think you have to somehow make sure your shower is like all the way up like a wall so it doesn't all escape. And I don't want to think about that. And so yeah, my gym has a steam room. Conventional saunas I feel like you can stay in them longer maybe. There's something about the infrared where it doesn't seem that hot at first.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who, try it out. And after 5 minutes, they're like, I'm fine. I could be in here for an hour. I'm like, all right, well, just wait. And there's something about those, I think the far and near infrared waves, whatever it is, after like 20 minutes that you start feeling like you've been in a microwave. And it's like, all right. So I think the best I've ever done is 45 minutes. And I was toasted after that. I mean, just totally relaxed. My GABA activity must have been incredible. I literally, I think it was in the middle of the afternoon. I just wanted to test myself. Like, how long can I stay in without hurting myself? Luckily, it goes off after 60 minutes, no matter what. So if I passed out, then I'd wake up and it'd be okay. But I went cold shower and I just took the best nap that I'd ever taken.
Wow.
So I don't know that, I'm sure there are benefits to all of them.
Sure.
And I know they've done studies on mostly conventional saunas. I think there are studies as well on infrared too. And I'm not familiar enough with the literature to know exactly what happens, but I know that you are releasing heat shock proteins. A great person to listen to if you're into that is Rhonda Patrick.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome. She's been
Yeah.
on Joe Rogan several times, and he talks about saunas all the time as well.
That's
that probably
that's how I got into it the most.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it's part of the zeitgeist, but it's a great thing. I'm glad it is. And I try to go, sometimes I'll go 2 or 3 days without it and I feel a little different.
Sure. Yeah, that's it really, it's such a relaxing, incredible thing. The cold shower after something I don't do, but I that's a awesome idea. I'm definitely going to try to incorporate that. Proven to, I don't know, does it add the effects on after? Like, have you researched into that?
So yeah, there's supposed to be benefit to hot, cold, hot, cold. There are different ways to do it. I really wish I had a cold plunge pool because that would be the icing on the cake. I remember I went to Europe as a kid. I went to Germany and they had these saunas and everyone was naked, which was weird at the time, but it was like co-ed. But they had the sauna and then a cold plunge pool. And you would just go in the sauna for as long as you could handle it. And you'd have like your lemon water or whatever, and then go right to the cold pool. And even as a kid, I was like, I don't think I would have gone in the cold pool, like starting off at base temperature. But when you get that hot, it seems like heaven to like, oh my God, let's cool off. And then, oh my God, let's warm up again. There's got to be a ridiculous endorphin release from that. And I feel like there's some effect on blood circulation. I know when you get really cold, if you do cryotherapy, your blood tends to come into your organ area and leave your extremities. And then maybe when you go into the hot environment, it flushes it out. So I think there's speculation, if not studies, that, you're kind of improving the blood flow through your organ systems and detoxifying. And then of course, sweating would help you detoxify as well. But I've had some injuries. I train in mixed martial arts and I don't compete, but I have some training partners who do. And, I've had on and off elbow tendonitis from just throwing jabs and various things, shoulder stuff from grappling. And if it's the winter, then I will always jump into that cold pool, stay in there for as long as I can, go right back in the steam room at the gym. And it definitely helps.
That's awesome. That's incredible. How you love training mixed martial arts? I did jujitsu for a little bit. Hurt my hip pretty bad, but
oh really?
Yeah, so I take some time off, but it seemed awesome, and it was a great, test, all that. It was just a incredible hobby to have, or another tool and another thing to add on to the fitness and all of it, the mindset. Probably Joe Rogan, one of them guys, put up a thing on social media, like, before a session, it's like some angry guy, and it's after, and they're like Zen Buddha, after an hour of training and sweating and all that.
There's definitely something to that. And I actually was a fan of like UFC, even when I drank. And it's funny how the universe seems to work sometimes, because I would get hammered and watch these fights. And I had done martial arts as a kid. I mean, I wasn't like a national champion or whatever, but I did Taekwondo for a number of years. I did a little bit of boxing in New York until my drinking got the best of me. I used to live in Manhattan, and I did some Krav Maga. And, I was thinking during watching these UFC fights, like in another universe, I feel like I would have been good at this, but I know I can't stop drinking. So I guess it's just not for me. And I would get upset sometimes and think, you know what, in another universe, I'm sparring with a UFC guy, like, and I'm happy, and I can not think about alcohol constantly. And then sure enough, I end up in Savannah, and there's the most awesome diamond in the rough, hidden gem of all time, a retired UFC fighter who was one fight away from fighting Conor McGregor back during his prime, I guess we could say, who he retired due to some hernias. His name's Stephen Bass. He lives in Savannah. Really, really talented fighter, knows a huge amount about martial arts, jiu-jitsu, boxing, Muay Thai, judo, wrestling, all the stuff. And just decided that his mission was to coach and to help people hopefully reach the same level he did or higher. And he also has this really interesting theme of like social improvement through the martial arts. So getting people off the streets where they're fighting with knives and guns or fists in the street, and getting them in to boost their endorphins in a controlled setting where they can get the benefits without the risks, and they can actually use that as a launch pad for building a better life and being happy. So I just randomly, I had a friend who had done a private session with him, and I went there, and that was, you know, around maybe over 3 years ago now. And I've been at that gym. It's like a second home to me ever since.
Wow.
And so I've thought about, you know, I know he does some cross training events with his fighters and the Gracie Jiu-Jitsu gym, which is great. We have one of those here, and there's some boxing gyms, but I feel like all of my like MMA needs are covered by him. So I won't be getting a belt, but I feel really good about just training with him and training with the guys. And there's also a sense of camaraderie, you know, like it's been said, I don't disagree with this, even though I am known as the supplement guy, that addiction is like a lack of connection. There's something there. So I was, you know, I'm able to go to these fights. The last one was in Jacksonville. It was my main training partner who won his fight. And I'd never been to an MMA fight. I mean, it wasn't UFC, but it was probably, you know, a step or two below, and it was impressive. These guys were monsters. And, you know, he won his fight, and it was like a celebratory mood. And like people are, it's an uplifting sport, despite being a gritty sport. You know, like I was a little shocked that there were like toddlers in the front row and people doing profane victory speeches, dropping F-bombs, whatever. All right, well, different culture, I guess, in this sport, but it was a lot of fun. And, you know, just having that camaraderie is such a great, I don't want to say substitute, because I don't want to just say, oh, you replace drinking with this. It's so much better that substitute isn't the right word. And neither is it. You just launch into a new life. And for some people, it might be joining a group that likes to do nature hikes, or, I mean, skiing is something that I grew up skiing, and I have not skied since I quit drinking. And I've vowed to myself that I'm going to remedy that, go on a ski trip with a bunch of friends that I haven't talked to in a while. Like rekindling connection and building new connections is so important. And of course, MMA also has the fitness aspect. But as a, you know, if I'm having I don't really have bad days compared to the way I did when I drank. But if I'm like focusing on something that's maybe not healthy and I walk into that gym, it all dissipates instantly. And an hour or 3 hours later, or however long my workout is, when I walk out of that gym, I'm like refreshed. It's like I'm a laptop that's been restarted, and whatever the bugs were before have gone.
That's an incredible way to look at it. And that's so powerful. An hour and a half at the gym is, I don't care if my biceps look great. I'm not trying, you know, it's like, that is so much more than that mentality, mindset. And then I can't imagine a 2 or 3 hour training session. That's got to be levels above that, just with the camaraderie added in, with the mentality added in, the social aspect. That's powerful. What does a day in the life of Chris Scott look like now? What's your average day, your average week?
Well, it starts by taking my dogs out to poop.
Okay.
And we've already done that today. And they both pooped, so it's gonna be a good day.
Are they right near you?
What's that?
Can you show them real quick? Are they still sitting next to you?
I need to bribe them with some treats. They're probably sleeping.
Okay.
I'm gonna try to get.
Oh, hey, buddy. There's the Soberdogs. That's Magnus.
Yep, he's a pit bull mix. Hey, Magnus, give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. Like, no, I don't want to give you a kiss because you're hoisting me up on your knee. And then Freya, they're both pit bull mixes, and they're both rescues. Freya's a klutz, and she will likely knock over my table here. Here she is.
Oh,
right. Good girl. Give me a kiss.
Oh, she's the kisser. That's beautiful.
Thank you. Wow. She's a pretty girl. So yeah, that's how it starts. And, you know, I read a book last year that was recommended to me by a friend called The Miracle Morning.
Okay.
And I love that book. I'm horrible at remembering the names of authors, so that's slipping my mind. I'm bad with names. But reading that book helped me just totally revamp my morning routine.
Sure. Because
it usually had been make some coffee or tea and just sit down and start working.
Yeah.
But I was able to, I set a timer on my phone. I don't use the timer anymore because I'm used to it. But for a while, it would be like 5 minutes, just 5, meditating, and then writing in, I would make some coffee or tea just to get the brain going a little bit. Yeah. And then I would write in a journal. And I don't tend to have a particularly emotional journal writing style. It's often bullet lists or things that I want to do in the gym, or things that occurred to me, a dream I had about some jujitsu move that my coach showed me, or it's a business idea, whatever,
Sure.
whatever's in my subconscious mind that needs to come out, or else I'm going to forget it when the morning haze wears off. So that goes, all that goes in my journal. And then well, sauna used to be a morning thing. It was on that routine, but it stopped being that. Usually I'll play with my dogs a little bit. And I read a page out of a book called 365 Tao, Tao. And that's I guess a Taoist, it's almost like haikus, but they're not haikus. It's taken from whatever the ancient Buddhist literature is. And then there's a scholar who does a couple paragraphs about whatever that section is. And I mean, each page is like a self-contained unit. So you could have one page to be gratitude, the next could be courage, the next could be forgiveness, and so on and so on. There's 365 of those. So I'll focus on one of those things, try to get my mind out of like me, what am I going to do? And and that's kind of my morning routine. After that, I usually work out around noon, so I don't do intense workouts immediately after getting up. I know some people do that, but I like to do, I have a Yeti 90-pound kettlebell here that I got from On It, actually. And I'll sometimes just do some basic squats, warm up the legs a little bit. And I have some issues with hamstring tightness, probably due to kicking and deadlifts and all that. So I have some stretches that I do to try to keep my hamstrings from making me walk like a 10-man, especially walking into MMA, because I'll get called out for that. So I'll do some little stretching. I have a little, it's called a Sorite, as in psoas. So PSO-RITE, which is a very oddly expensive but worth it piece of plastic that you can get from Amazon for anyone who has hamstring or psoas tightness. And it's kind of like a torture device in that you lay on it and it sticks prongs into your gut. It's weird, but the psoas wraps around the spine, wraps around the pelvic bones as well. And that pressure point release somehow helps me stand up a little bit more straight, and also releases some of the tension, because the psoas can pull on the hamstrings and even the quads. So I'll do that and do some
I was gonna say, I never even heard of the psoas until I was watching David Goggins one day, and he was talking about everything psoas and how he started doing like an hour of psoas stretches and how important it is. That's awesome you bring it up.
I would think he would have to. I mean, his workout regimen is way more intense than mine for anyone alive, probably, except for maybe 4 or 5 people out there. And I'm not one of them. So yeah, if he has to do an hour, I do about 5 to 10 minutes, and that's probably right for me. But yeah, it's super important and a huge topic. The body mind system is a really interesting thing. I got into yoga as well. I do yoga once a week. I used to do it more. I'd like to start doing it a bit more, but I've heard yogis talk about how we store trauma or tension in the hips. And the brain, we think of the brain as being its own thing, and that there's all of our emotions and all of our memories are stored in the brain. But there seems to be increasing evidence that this stuff's intimately related to the body. Like you can store memories and things. We've had people with heart transplants or organ transplants who all of a sudden develop a taste for broccoli when they didn't have one before. Weird stuff like that. Or they'll have a memory that they didn't have before. And so I don't know, I don't know if that's anecdotal or it's been studied, but it seems consistent with what I've found, which is, the whole body is important. It's not just the brain.
Yeah. And all the new, I don't say it's necessarily new, and I'm sure you could probably, more about this than me. You don't necessarily have to get deep into it, but how important like gut health, and it's your second brain, and how it's connected intimately with mood and all that type of stuff, all the research and everything coming out with that. It just proves the point that much more of how interconnected everything is. And if we focus that, like you said, the brain's not just a separate entity, and then the body is what it is. Where can everybody find you? Shout out all your stuff, Instagram, wherever you are, YouTube, all that stuff.
Well, first, thank you, Kyle, for having me on.
Of course, thank you.
Fun. I'd love to have you on our podcast at some point. Sure. I have a joint podcast with Matt Finch, who founded Opiate Addiction Support, called the Elevation Recovery Podcast. So there's a lot of different terms. We have several different recovery-oriented organizations with different terms, but that's the podcast. And I have a Fit Recovery YouTube channel as well. You can just type that into YouTube or into Google. There's a lot of free info on my blog, as I said, and we have a contact page for anyone who wants to reach out. I'm glad you said you found me on Instagram, because I suck at Instagram. I'm not good at all. I'm trying to get better. I've realized I'm not the kind of person, unfortunately, to monitor that every day. So I'm trying to enlist some help. And ultimately, I think I could get excited by it if I figure that platform out a little more, just get more familiar. Like, I know I need to start doing reels, and I'm like, where's the reel? I have to take the dogs out to poop and I forget about it.
Yeah.
So I'm working on that. But yeah, it is Chris Scott Fit Recovery on Instagram, I believe. I don't even know my own Instagram handle. But yeah, if you search for Fit Recovery, and actually we have links to all of these things at fitrecovery.com. So all of the social stuff that we have is there. We have a Facebook group. Again, the Facebook, Instagram parts are my weakness, but we have some people who are there. We have a really good closed Facebook group for people in the course, which is called Total Alcohol Recovery 2.0. And I mean, that's surpassed my wildest expectations. People are so supportive, and we have some prolific writers and like journalists and lawyers and doctors, and then people, artists, and God knows everyone's in there. Sure. And, you know, just kind of united by a shared genuine interest in figuring this thing out and sharing progress, sharing struggles. Yeah. So I think, you know, I'm proud of that, even if I'm not particularly Facebook savvy. And, you know, we have alcohol recovery coaches as well, and we've just added some more to our team, who do help people on a one-on-one basis. But for anyone who's interested, fitrecovery.com is probably the best place to go.
Awesome. And last question, are you guys it sounds like with you teaming up with Matt, you guys do opioids and other things as well, kind of encompass it all, or is it the main focus alcohol?
Good question. So Fit Recovery is mostly alcohol focused, but the podcast also discusses other substances. Okay. I'm interested in expanding and, you know, collaborating with people like Matt to help people with different substances. I myself don't know that much, not nearly as much as Matt does, about opioids or antidepressants or benzos. I know the basics. I can help people, give some general guidance, but and I have helped people who are clients, you know, but most of it is, you know, go talk to a doctor, because I don't know what dosage you should be on, and et cetera. So luckily we have an awesome addiction medicine director named Dr. Ken Starr for Fit Recovery, and he's twice board certified. He's you know, MD, and he knows all of the nutritional methods to heal from alcohol addiction and other addictions as well. So we do have some people who can help with that kind of thing, but Fit Recovery and the course primarily is about alcohol, but we're looking into going into the other directions too.
Awesome. Incredible. Definitely. I could see you guys doing that in the future. That'd be awesome.
Yeah. And I should say that Matt Finch has for many years in opiate addiction as well. And his website is opiateaddictionsupport.com. And he has tons of free articles and a course as well. I think a bunch of different courses, depending on which opiate is involved, to help people with that situation. And he had overdosed on heroin, I think twice before he quit. And he also had an alcohol addiction, went through delirium tremens. And he's way more multifaceted than I am in terms of like, what do they call it? Polysubstance abuse. He was using crystal meth to get rid of alcohol withdrawal back in the day. And I was just a finance guy to drinking too much red wine and vodka, but a lot of it, and probably more alcohol than he drank. Wow.
That's incredible. You guys connected though. And it sounds like you can just help so many people. And it all encompasses back to me. One of your videos I was watching, you said, you know, I'm just open-minded. All 4 more tools in the toolbox or toolkit, however it was. And that's incredible. Chris, thanks again. I appreciate it. And I can't wait to do something again in the near future.
Absolutely. Thanks, Kyle. Keep up the great work. We'll be talking for sure.
Thanks very much. Go play with the dogs. Have a great day.
You as well.
Thank you.